I was messing with the settings earlier. That is not
advised.
Not advised. I did leave a post-it note on the camera, though, just to remind myself in case I left it that way.
And we did just work on a European project that required us to go to 25.
Yes, we did.
Cinetherapy Podcast with Sam and Mitch. Dad.
Welcome to the Cinetherapy Podcast by Inland Film Co. I'm Mitch Williams, joined by Sam McGhee. This is episode 7. In this installment, we discuss lenses, focal lengths, and gimbals. We dive into what our workflow looks like, as well as Scrum boards and Premiere project organization. Enjoy. How do you want to begin?
Welcome back, Mitch.
Welcome back, Sam. Took a little hiatus from the podcast. We did not take a week off from work, that's for sure.
No. I was sick. My whole house was sick.
Yeah, you had stomach flu on a Sunday, and then your son got it on like a Thursday or Friday, and then you and your wife got the stomach flu on the following Sunday. So you got it 2 times in 1 week.
It was not fun. It was not fun. And I was pretty sure, I was kind of convinced that it was, mine was E. coli with the romaine lettuce, but
No,
I don't think so.
that was just a conspiracy.
It was a conspiracy.
Just for the spinach industry, trying to help the other guy.
Oh, good Lord. Oh my gosh. Hey, it is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and my coffee is still hot.
Are you trying to lead me into asking, why is it still hot, Sam?
It's 135 degrees, my coffee is.
Fahrenheit?
Fahrenheit. I won an Ember mug from Victory Media.
Yeah, you did. Well, I guess we can start with some comments in the feeds, in the Instagrams, in the Instahams. We had a gentleman, Andrew Botterbush, I believe. I went through his feed. It looks pretty neat. He likes nature outdoors.
It's pretty neat.
Got pictures of like aerials, like tractors, and that stuff's always cool to see.
Aerials of tractors. Do you think he does drones?
Yeah, I think he does drones. Anyways, this Andrew fella was reaching out, asking a question about lenses. What kinds of lenses we prefer, or what?
Yeah. He specifically asked if we ever use 100 millimeters, which is kind of a funny, specific focal range. I know 100 millimeter macro is a normal thing, but we don't do a lot of macro.
We don't. And our response to that was, what are you going to use it for? Are you going to, if it's for one project or one shot, maybe borrow it or rent it until you find that you're always wanting to use 100 millimeter?
Yeah.
And then he asked what we typically use, and we kind of stick in that 35 millimeter range. So
yeah,
I guess where we were going to get at in this discussion is to anybody who cares about focal lengths and lenses and whatnot, you just find what you like and use it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely key. Find what you like. I come from the wedding world, so like 50 millimeters and 85 millimeters were always my go-to. Notice how I used past tense. When I first started getting more into the documentary and corporate video world, I brought my 85 millimeter f1 point whatever, and I was doing a lot of shallow depth of field stuff, and the director that kept hiring me as DP really liked what I was doing with the 85 millimeter for interviews and for B-roll, and the guy who was DPing for her before I showed up said he gave me some advice. He said she doesn't like shallow depth of field, and I was like, well, that's BS. Who doesn't like shallow depth of field? And plus, that's just how I do everything. So I slowly started incorporating this into when it should give me a shot list, and I'd get shallower and shallower with it. And then she finally one day was like, I really love what you're doing. But the guy who's doing this before you never really, it was never, things were never in focus. So I just wanted him to stop down. And I realized, she loves this. You just aren't doing it. You were just not in focus.
Yeah.
It makes sense. So, 85 millimeter was my go-to for a lot of interview stuff. And I still like that but that's more of a second camera angle. I mean, we don't get a lot of second camera angles. I love 35 now.
For sure.
Find someone, borrow it, see if you love it.
Yeah. Or rent, or if you borrow, throw them a little gift card somewhere to Applebee's,
Throw them a gift card to Applebee's.
What was I just
half price
watching?
apps?
Oh, it was Talladega Nights. That's why I thought
yes.
of Applebee's. I was thinking, how much money did they spend to be natively advertised in Talladega Nights?
Oh my gosh. And Powerade.
Yeah.
Powerade.
For sure. So, point of the story there.
Yeah.
Borrow lenses, rent them, try them out. They're an investment. And
that's the thing.
If you buy one, you better freaking use them all the time. So I was reached out to this week by someone looking to buy a gimbal and technically buy a gimbal for a family member.
Yeah.
And they brought up some Pilot Fly or something like that. And the only gimbal I know of to hold a DSLR that I would ever consider or a mirrorless camera would be the Ronin S. Ronin S, correct? Not Ronin 2S. I think it's the Ronin S. It's just the Ronin S.
I don't even know.
The Ronin 2 is what we've looked at for.
Yeah.
So anyways, so I sent over the Ronin S. It's out of the budget that this person wants to spend. And my first thought is, what is your daughter going to use this for?
Yeah.
What camera does she have? Is she going to, shoot weddings? I see a decent amount of wedding photographers or videographers roll around with these little gimbals in their hands. And, I know they make really sweet, stable shots. What we were going to get at is people are attracted to technology. I think that was where we were thinking. And you and I had this discussion earlier today of it's cool. Yeah. If it's going to do what you want it to do and that's what you're attracted to, sweet. I want to ask the question, but why? You need to know why you're going to use a gimbal. What is the purpose?
Yeah.
Is it because of, I don't know.
Yeah. But you mentioned people like to talk about technology. People love talking about technology. Mm-hmm. We were talking to somebody today about the 5D Mark IV. They have a 5D Mark III. It's one of our clients who loves
cameras,
photographing. Yeah. They love cameras. This dude has more packed into his little Pelican case than we do, more tech, and it's amazing. Every time we go into his office, he's got something new, and he's got the 5D Mark III. He usually just uses it for, he uses it for photos and videos.
Mm-hmm.
But he asked, what do you think about the new 5D Mark IV? And in my personal opinion, I just I'm bummed out that the 5D Mark IV doesn't do 4K with the full sensor.
Yeah.
And just downsample it to 4K. I don't know why it doesn't do that. It bums me out. So I'm not going to buy one. But he's like, what do you think about it? Because it's got the face detection and the autofocus and all this cool stuff. And it dawns on me, you know what? He loves this. And I just said, yeah, it does. It's got all those cool things, and this is cool, and this is cool, and maybe you should think about trading it in. And we had a good conversation, and I didn't have to be Debbie Downer and say, well, it doesn't do 4K with the full frame, and the bit rate's dumb, and whatever, and so I'm not going to get one.
It didn't meet the specs that the specs he cared about weren't the ones you cared about.
It's true,
and that's the truth. At the end of the day, people ask us our opinions on something of what we would recommend. usually I recommend. I mean, I recommend it even in this case with this woman I know, the Ronin S, because if I was going to buy a handheld gimbal, that's what I buy. At the end of the day, I'm also not going to sit there and talk her out of buying whatever else.
Right.
I do like to ask questions, though, of why.
You do like that question. You've unintentionally talked me out of a lot of things just by simply asking, but why? You ask that question, and then all of a sudden I like realize, oh my gosh, I don't need this. Damn it.
But that is, I would say that's a benefit of having a partner, like being a partner in something, you know, is that you're able to challenge each other on the purpose of whatever it is.
It's very true.
Yeah. Sending the final cut is important.
You got somebody flustered though when you said something about Final Cut. You were on a phone call with we're doing a project for a local company that has a parent company, and you got on a phone call with the parent company, and they were like, "So when can we see a rough cut?" And you said, "Oh, well, we send a Final Cut, and we'll send it at around this time." And they were like, "Hold on, a Final Cut?" And you had to explain it.
Yeah. I said, we don't send rough cuts, and it caught her off guard. And then when I explained it to her, it made sense.
Yeah.
She was, I just basically said, I won't send you something that I'm not confident about putting in front of an audience. Like I when she got that, she goes, well, will we be able to make revisions? I said, obviously you're the one paying for this, that you're going to be able to, if there's something that doesn't, meet compliance, or something that you just absolutely think shouldn't be in there, or maybe we missed, or whatever. Yeah, you can give us your feedback, and we'll take it. But I'm not going to send you a rough cut and say that, we're not even sure if this should be on the internet.
Right. Right. That's kind of, that mindset has helped me a lot lately. We've been pumping out so many films in the past couple of months. We had a lot of filming that we did, and we're editing all of it now. And every time I export something and I call it not draft, I don't put draft on stuff anymore. That's hard for me to not put draft on it, because I think we're definitely going to have a revision, and I don't want to. So calling it a master or something, and sending it with full confidence and saying, hey, we know you're going to love this. Here's what we did and why, and never referring to it as a draft, always referring to this as the final product. It's boosted my confidence in the things that we're making.
People respect it more. I mean, it's, and put place value on the fact that you're the expert. When you go try on a shoe, and if somebody tells you that, this is just a concept, you're not going to walk out the door with the beta,
right?
And they start telling you all the different things. Like, there could be some more support here, there could be more. Then you start thinking about all the wrong things with the shoe, and what could be done with it. And so when you walk in, and shoe might be a poor example, but
well, we've talked about this before with somebody where they asked, we were talking about this with somebody where they said, well, I just have a lot of empathy, and I don't want to, I don't want them to think that they can't suggest changes. I don't want them to think that I think I'm a big deal. And we argued the point that you're not feeling empathy, you're feeling insecurity about the thing that you're sending. And at the Falls, let's come back to school and education. One of the things that they hit on really hard when I was in photography school is never saying it, just period, never saying anything when you turn over a product. And that's mostly because you don't want to display your insecurities when you send it over, because you don't know what the client's going to think. And so this is something that's always kind of been in the back of my mind, but you've kind of spurred me to start realizing that if I make this film and I say, okay, so I'm not sure about the music, and I think there might be a couple things that you're going to want to cut, and there are a few strange B-roll things that I think are creative, but I want to make sure that you like. I hand it to you, and now you're thinking, what am I about to watch? But all the films that we've sent in the last couple of months where I'll just say me, you've got a lot more confidence in this than I do. Here is the final film. I think we're really excited about it. We chose some music that I think really tailors to the story, and I think you're going to like this. And just saying that, we've seen a significant drop in the requests for changes. I just got a text for a client. We sent a film, been waiting to hear back about possible revisions, and this client usually needs revisions. And I sent it over, and I said, "This is hey, here's a final for you to look at." And I explained, like, we boiled down the story and this, and I said some cool things that we liked. Sent it over, and he has one change request, and it was just a simple little, we need to make sure we mention this, period. He's never been that okay with a product that I've sent. He's never had that little amount of revisions to request. And it's all because of...
You've been working with him for a couple of years.
So changing my mindset, getting rid of all the insecurities, and just sending it over and saying, here's a final. We know you're going to love it. It, on their end, it raises the respect is respect the word that you used for the product that we just sent?
Yeah. It's a... Respect is a good word. I think it's the person that you brought up, the discussion we had around empathy or insecurity. One of his issues, and we had a really good discussion around this, came full circle, I think, and we were all on the same page at the end of it. But one of his issues was that you may be coming off as like having an ego. In that scenario. And I don't look at it as ego. I look at it as my empathy for the customer is trying to involve them in as little of the process or the work as possible, because they hired us because we're the experts. Mind you, if they come in and we have a creative meeting and they list out all the things that their vision and their goals are, we're going to take that into account.
Yeah.
But in terms of going out and making a video, they trust, one of us as producer. Yeah. They trust one of us as director, and they trust either of us to run camera as well. Like it's you're either producer on the film that you just worked on and DP and you edited whatever, and vice versa. Yeah. We go into this meeting, they trust us collectively to do that. If I bring them into the room in terms of this is a rough cut, I'm then asking them to step into the editing room, not necessarily literally, like figuratively or remotely. Yeah. I'm asking them to get into the mindset of editor, director, producer. And I feel like sending this to them with the full vote of confidence that this is a final cut actually does them more favors, because it says, sweet. It, like, if they come into it, they know, they trust my word that it's a final production. Yeah. They get to press play and watch it with open eyes of like an audience member, not as a critic. And then I feel like that is providing them, that is having more empathy for the customer. Because I know personally, the years of getting to know, CEOs, general managers, people in CMOs, CFO, whatever, like it doesn't matter. Yeah. Those people in those positions of leadership, they have enough on their plate, right, that you're doing more of a service for them if you if you have all the confidence in yourself and the end product that you deliver them,
right?
Then if you lack confidence, then why did they hire you in the first place?
I also think another point of like I don't feel like we're being cocky by saying here's a final, because they hired us to make art, and I think we all need to recognize like making a film is an art. Even if it's a corporate video, it's still, you asked us to make some art for you, and we're holding like this. We're trying to help you tell your story. I mean, if we go back to the story brand book, your story is the hero. You as the client. So all I'm trying to do is help you. So if I'm coming in here and I'm saying, here's a final, we really think you're going to like this, we're helping you. So for me, I'm not saying I made a really kick-ass film and you're going to love this because I'm the best.
Yeah.
That's not the attitude. The attitude is I made something for you and I really think you're going to like it.
Yeah.
And it's like giving. And I think that's where, like, again, that's the empathy on my part. It's like, you hired us to help you tell your story, and we really want to do that, and we're trying to help you do the best job that you can. So the empathy is already happening. And I don't know. This is cool.
You brought up story brand, and in the story brand, you brought up the hero. Well, your job as a brand, like to your client, your business is supposed to be the guide.
Yeah.
Yoda was the guide to Luke Skywalker. Obi-Wan before that. Haymitch was the guide to Katniss Everdeen, right? So they use those examples. Nowhere along the line does the guide come in and say, when the hero asks a question, does the guide say, I'm really not sure.
Right.
I don't even know if any of the advice I've given you is going to help. It's like, no, the guide has a confidence statement that's going to lead them to the next step in their journey of being the hero.
Yeah.
And so, again, if they come to us, ask us to do a video, and we just say, I'm not sure if this is what you're looking for. I'm not sure if the music is the right thing. I'm not sure if the story, maybe we could move a few things. You're taking away all of the confidence in them thinking that you're the right person to complete the job.
And that's also still not to say that we don't think that there will ever be revisions. Like, we know, we kind of have the assumption that there's a chance they might ask for a revision, but still handing it over and saying this is the final gives them more confidence, and there are less things they're thinking about changing. They're thinking about this I like that you said they're thinking about this from an audience perspective. They're taking it in as an audience member. They're not thinking about it critically from the first get-go. And it's really hard. On the other side of that, like we sent a film to another client, said this is the final, what do you think of it? And it's amazing. As creatives, we're sitting in here like, we're filming, we're trying to mess with lighting, and we're picking music, and this whole thing is like, making films is emotional. It's an emotional process. And we put a lot of work into this. And then you wrote this really beautiful email, like saying, here's how we told the story and why we think it's the best way. And this is cool. And we sent it over. And like a day later, we get a response of,
remove this from title card at
18 seconds. And
add
this text at the end.
Yeah.
No other changes for me. And that's like the simple, and there's no like, this is cool, great. There's no positive. It's just that. And that, I mean, how often does that happen?
That was the middleman for marketing for that company.
Yeah.
And I was happy to have then gotten a separate response from the CEO.
Okay. Really?
Yeah, I think I screenshotted it.
Oh my gosh, that's
and
good.
Sent it to you.
Okay, that's good.
And she said, we did a fabulous job telling the story. Thank you so much.
Right on.
To hear her come, she either saw how short that other person was on email,
yeah,
and was like, I want to let them know they did a great job, or she just I mean, she wrote me separately.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that was cool. And
Okay, that is cool.
And she didn't have any changes. So
Awesome.
I'm not trying to talk ourselves up here.
No, I mean the point the point I wanted to make is like, how often does it happen that you pour like because this
as
is
a
art.
creative for
This
sure.
is art. I mean, we're sitting around making we're running a business. We're making corporate videos, but we look at this as art. I mean, we're going to sit around and talk about film directors and films we've watched and all these things that have affected us and like we're doing these short films for Indaba coffee roasters, and we're literally sitting inside this coffee shop. We have the camera on a slider, and I followed one of the dailies we posted this last week.
142. 242.
Daily Reel 242 is inside Indaba Coffee Shop on Howard Street in downtown Spokane, and I followed the very first shot. I followed the barista from one counter to the next, and it was the pan on the head on the slider was loose. So I was able to slide and pan, and I followed the barista from this counter to this counter, like perfect sequence. And it gave me that eerie Fincher feel, the eerie Fincher-esque, like following the motion. And it was so, it was by happenstance that it was so accurate. We were just sort of like run and gun, but we're looking for those things, right? Like we're just standing around in the coffee shop filming them making coffee, but you get that, and suddenly you're taken out of that. And I'm getting super excited about this art that we're making, and then you send it over, and you're so excited. This doesn't have anything to do with Indaba at this point. It's just we send over the corporate video, and the response is, yeah, change this and this. No more changes. And it's just that simple. How often does that happen?
It does happen. I think I don't know if I want to say it's like 50-50.
No, we don't have to.
I don't know what the percentage is, but being creatives, you just have this I don't know, you have to build up some sort of immunity or some
you
sort
totally
of,
do.
Like callous, I guess, to those types of clients. And at the end of the day, move on to the next one,
right? And
try to focus on those clients, like taking in the ones that really appreciate the work you're doing.
Yeah. And it also, I forgot that you did get an email from someone else also at that company, and that was awesome. I mean, one of the tech companies I've done work for a long time before we actually started Inland, they've gone through marketing manager after marketing manager, and most of the time I was just working with the marketing manager, and we'd make these product videos it's a telecommunications. We make all these product videos, and it's a lot of like, change this, and if you do get a cool one, it might be like it looks good, but there's never like a big positive, oh man, this is so cool. It's just like, finish the tech video. Is it accurate? Does it look fine? Is the music okay? Put it out there. But it was, I think, I passed by the CEO in the hallway, and he goes, man, you guys in marketing, all the videos are so awesome. You guys have really been doing a good job. And I was taken out of like the world of the micro little changes, making sure everything's accurate, and you never hear a lot of positivity. I was taken out of that and realized, man, the CEO thinks we're doing a good job, and it, like, he's looking at the macro level. And I had to step back and realize this is all working really well. So we need positivity.
Yeah.
We need positivity. And I think you and I we do try really hard to step back and look at the big picture in our business a lot. Cause we get into, we have like 20 some videos we were supposed to finish in the last month. And we get really into these little nitpicky things, pumping out Premiere edits, pumping out all these things and trying to make sure that everything works, trying to make sure the client's happy, trying to make sure this, and then, we try to make sure that we're stepping back and recognizing that, oh my gosh, look at how many cool films and happy clients we just pumped out in the last month. Let's recognize this.
You mentioned sitting in Premiere and pumping out a bunch of stuff. And this is jumping the gun on the docket, but
yeah,
that seems like a perfect segue to hop into workflow and how we set up projects in Premiere. You want to jump into that? I can.
I wrote that down because that was a question I was going to ask you.
Ask me.
You have a lot of experience in the software world. And I think that as a director and as a you are running a lot of the operational stuff here. You're the one who keeps us on track. I think that the way that we're managing the massive amount of projects we have going on at any given time, the way that you manage them and keep us on track and make sure that we're keeping in contact with the client, filming, editing, sending out invoices. The way that you manage all this is not the way that a film shop would actually manage these. It feels more like a software startup.
I can't speak to it from a film shop standpoint because I worked at a decent sized production company in Spokane in 2009. But it was on a film, like on a feature film. We worked on John Carpenter's The Ward, and that is an entirely different animal than the, like marketing film side company. So you may be right, but I can't say that no other film shop's doing it this way. I'm sure there are a number that do. Coming from the software background though, you're correct. We, in the few startups I worked for, we operated with a Scrum board and similar Scrum, Kanban. Those are two different but very similar ways of operating with project management. And for us, I have here in the studio 3 different Scrum boards. One is for invoicing, and it is a column called draft invoice, and every client that we have under that needs to be an invoice needs to be drafted is on a sticky note, and they're put under there. Then we have send invoice, and when you've drafted the invoice, it's moved from draft invoice to send invoice, and then when we get paid, it is moved to the paid column. So that is one side of our task management. The other is one called one for proposals, and there's draft proposal, send proposal, and then in the third column I have a green sticky called won and a red sticky called lost, and we move them from draft to sent to won or lost. And the final, probably most important, because it includes deadlines for actual living clients, is we have project or client and project name. Filming / pre-production is the second column. And then next, so next to each of those projects, they each have like where we need to film locations, or if it's an interview or a talking head, or even voiceover is included in there in the pre-production side. And then we go to the editing column. So once anything is done in filming or pre-production, it is moved from filming pre-production to editing. And then as long as it's sitting in editing, it once it's the final edit is done, final cut, it is then just shifted over to done. And then once all the stickies for each of the projects is done, they're just moved off the board altogether. The most important aspect of that, in my opinion, is we've talked about deadlines are God, cash flow is king, is putting a deadline on the sticky for each of the projects. And then going a step further, putting those in the calendar is also important. I suggest putting weekly, a week ahead reminder at a minimum probably, to keep you, on target for hitting your deadline. And yeah, so that's how we operate here internally. It's every day we come into the studio, you can't ignore this. It's not a wall, it's a giant window. And they all three of these little windows, one's a big window, two are small, they have serve their purpose. And every day we come in and you can't ignore it. And so I think where I was going to get at with that is no matter what size film shop you are and what you choose to do, you need to have something like that in place. Yeah. And if you're going to do it on an Excel spreadsheet, sweet. But the only way you should do that is have those similar columns, but you better have Excel or Google Docs Google Sheets open every time you open your browser. Yeah. And it should be in front of you no matter what. And if you're using Trello or any of the other project management softwares, I personally don't like the list projects. It's distracting to me, this long line of lists. I like seeing things move from left to right, and that's worked for me. Yeah,
I was using lists before you showed up, and I was never on time with anything. And I think this whole system, that's why I wanted to bring it up, is because I feel like for me personally, just trying to make videos for people, I was late. I wasn't keeping track of what needed to be edited. I wasn't keeping track of things. So this whole system has totally kept us on track, and it's very, very cool. And there are times when I'll finish something and you're still working on something else, and I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm supposed to do for the rest of the day. But you look up there and you realize, oh, there's 3 other projects that I have all the footage for that I could start. Great.
And it becomes helpful when there's a for instance, the project that you just shipped, and the client only had one change.
Yeah.
That there was a perfect example of is that we knew the due date was November 30th, and the remaining piece of this whole project coming together that was still in pre-production was interview. And so it was just a couple of weeks ago, I say, Sam, we really need to schedule this person for this interview and get them in the studio. And had it not been in my face, if it's just this video's due at November 30th, we could show up to the last week of November and be like, oh crap, we need the interview. It's like adding each element and you can overdo it. I'm sure. Oh yeah, we got a fly on the table, just ready to die upside down. So the last thing I'll add to Scrum and workflow is that we also have a unique way of organizing our Premiere projects. I won't dive into it today.
Yeah.
But I will say that there's more to come probably in what we talk about in terms of how we manage these projects.
Yeah, because I think it's a big topic.
It is. And I will also work on writing an article or something on Medium.
That's a really good idea.
That includes the Scrum, some sort of visuals, and then also talking about how we organize projects, and whatnot. So
that's a really good idea. Everybody organizes their Premiere projects differently, and I've seen a lot of friends in this industry either just throw everything, all their clips, import them all, and just edit willy-nilly. When we edit something, we usually have like a main edit. We have an Instagram tall edit. We usually will do a lot of times we'll have an Instagram, a different size. And then sometimes there's a short version of it. So there's a lot of different sequences that we have to keep track of. There's usually like 3 or 4 different interviews that go into something, or a bunch of different scenarios of B-roll. Like we do a lot of construction documentaries. So there's the B-roll from the job site, B-roll from this factory, B-roll from their office, and there's like you don't want just all that in there. I'm just giving some backstory to why your organization of a Premiere file is so cool. I've watched other friends in this industry editing, and I see them just throw everything in there and just start editing on a sequence, and they just keep pulling things, and then they go somewhere along the line when they start importing more and more and more clips, they go, oh, maybe I should organize this. And I think, oh my gosh, how are you even keeping track of this? I've worked with a director in the past who was editing, who really had a lot of organization, but it was so extensive that it was so strange and it didn't make any sense. So I think what I'm getting to is you have really refined an organization inside Premiere for our workflow that I've been following. I see you follow, and it has really, number one, streamlined what we're doing, and number two, helped us. Like if you start a Premiere file that I have to then open, it all makes sense. Or if I start a Premiere file that you then have to open, everything makes sense, and I don't have to do any explaining. If I hand you a Premiere file, I know that you'll be able to open it up and know exactly where everything is.
Yeah. It involves a lot of cutting up front, but it works so well. By the time you're through all your clips and you've cut this fly, dude, is just hanging out right here inside the softbox. By the time you cut through everything, you just fly through your project or projects, plural, within that single Premiere project. So,
you actually sit down and we both do this. I say you because you're the one who spurred this whole thing on, and I think it's awesome. You sit down and you cut through. You'll listen to an entire interview, and you'll put that whole interview on its own sequence, and you'll go through and you'll cut it up, and you'll mark either color. You'll either label the color on the timeline, or you'll set marks, and you'll cut everything up and have that on its own sequence, and then you leave it there. You'll take B-roll from around the office, you put all that on its own sequence, and you cut up all the clips so everything's there. And then you'll do that for every sequence that we have. You'll put all those sequences in a little bin, and then you'll go and you'll start a main sequence for the main edit. And you go through the interview, and you go, okay, I'll grab these clips, I'll grab these clips, I'll grab these clips. And it's almost like you had to prepare the buffet before you were actually going to plate.
It makes it so much easier when you're sitting down cutting together the story, then to remember shots that will fit the story, because you know where you place them in which sequence. You know that a general B-roll sequence, if it's just fluff, it's going to be found in the general. But if it's this person, B-roll specific to this person, it's gonna, if it's somebody, going back to the ARC project, if they had their dog, and you cut up everything with their dog, that when that person is talking about their dog, that to go to find the sequence of B-roll with the person's dog. It's just that simple. And then another great sequence that we've gone way further into this than I thought we would, but is having daily reel clips. And that is when you find interesting content for us.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody else looking to post scraps online, it's a great thing to have a blooper sequence or scraps sequence. For us, we have it's called Daily Reel, and we push shots in there that are pull shots. That's coffee
pull shots
in there that we think may not make it to the final project. Yeah. Sometimes I'll put them in both places. I'll put them in a B-roll spot, and then if it doesn't make the final cut, sometimes if it does, because it's so cool.
Right. Being this efficient inside Premiere has allowed us to be more creative, because we're never looking for things. We know exactly where things are, and if we think, oh my gosh, I know what has to go here, we can find it. So
you clean out all the crap and all the clutter at the very start of the project in terms of post-production and editing. You get rid of that junk, and you only are dealing with the stuff that you're willing to put on into the final cut.
What directors or filmmakers or films are inspiring you right now? I know our last episode, Cameron Hotchkiss mentioned Wild Wild Country and said the interviews were super cinematic. We both have been watching Wild Wild Country. The interviews are amazing. They're beautiful. Shot on a red dragon with anamorphics, and I love the way that they shot the interviews in Wild Wild Country. Aside from the amazing editing, bringing in old
ton of old footage.
With Kevin Graham, we talked about how do you use footage that you didn't shoot in something. Wild Wild Country, man, they frame it square, all this original footage, and the way that they edit between the old news footage and the interviews and the B-roll they're shooting today, oh my gosh, the way that they're editing this stuff together, they're weaving this story together. My wife and I were both on the edge of the couch, jaws on the floor. It is a really enveloping story.
It is. I am 6, or maybe there are 6.
There's 6 episodes.
I'm 4 out of 6. So okay. I will probably watch episode 5 tonight. Still got to make a daily. It's your mom's birthday dinner tonight.
Yes, it is. So daily's going to happen kind of late tonight.
Yes, it is. And yeah, I would say we are, that has been inspiring for me. I think it's been inspiring because we've done a decent amount of documentary work this past year on more of the nonprofit side. Yeah. A little bit of the construction and labor industries side as well. I mean, so I'm inspired by it because I think we do a pretty good job. That's where I feel like we've been able to push the boundaries on our creativity and how we want to tell a story, and that's been exciting to me. I don't want to speak like so highly that we're just amazing at this stuff or whatever. Right. But where I've been most impressed with our storytelling has been in those types of projects. So it makes me think, man, before making a short or a feature even, was it something worth considering to choose a story and go run with it for a documentary? And, anyways, so that's crossed my mind. So Wild Wild Country has been part of that inspiration. You asked about a filmmaker, and I have to say Paul Thomas Anderson again, because not that I've said him on this, used his name on this podcast, but I was at my in-laws' cabin for Thanksgiving, and we all got to talking about movies because we were picking movies. We watched Big Lebowski. It's kind of an annual tradition when we're up there around wintertime to watch it, and I freaking love that movie. But so I could talk about the Coen brothers as well, but I'll stick to Paul Thomas Anderson. I mentioned have you seen Magnolia or There Will Be Blood? And everybody's like, no, nobody's seen it. My father-in-law, he just barely hears me talking about it. He goes, what movie are you talking about? And I was like, oh, There Will Be Blood. And he's like, oh, no, I've never seen it. And we're all sitting downstairs playing pool. The next thing I know, my father-in-law is not in the room, and I hear crashing sounds and just the most eerie strings music, and I immediately know it's There Will Be Blood. So I go upstairs, and sure enough, he's sitting on the couch. And I'm like, and it's like 9:00. I'm like, I was like, how are you
just starting it now?
Yeah.
What?
And I said, this is going to be like a 3-hour movie. He goes, oh, maybe I'll watch part of it. I'm thinking, no, you won't. You're going to watch the whole thing. And
You're watching the whole thing.
my wife's never seen it, and she watched probably 2/3 of it until she finally was like, I need to go to bed. And it was more like she was getting scared of what he was becoming, what Daniel Plainview was becoming. And so otherwise, I think she would have finished. Anyway, so we watched that, and I'm telling you, every time I watch that movie, I am blown away with how, I mean, it took a couple of phenomenal actors, but how he told such an amazing and super dark story without words so often. You talked about No Country for Old Men before, and that inspired you with cinema. I think There Will Be Blood came out around 2007. Maybe No Country for Old Men was shortly, I think, after. Maybe right around the same time. Anyways, those types of stories, just I want to do that. I love epic dialogue. I give Aaron Sorkin like a world of credit for being able to do that. Is it Noah Blomkamp or whatever his name?
Noah Baumbach
or whatever, with the Meyerowitz stories.
Yeah.
I mean, those are great. Those are great. Don't get me wrong. But when I feel this heavy weight and nothing's even being said, and that's when next morning, my father-in-law and I talked for probably 20 minutes after the movie about it.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, Sydney woke up before me, my wife, and was talking with her dad because he brought it up. And she's like, really? You stayed up? And he goes, I just couldn't stop watching. I was sucked in. And you feel this tension. So.
Yeah. I definitely think that when we start producing our own narrative features and episodic shows, I think the one of the biggest influencers on our stories that we want to tell is definitely Paul Thomas Anderson. We talk about him a lot. Dude, this fly is just best friends with you right now.
You got on your mustache for a sec. Yeah, PTA for sure.
When you and I first started talking about films, I had never seen a Paul Thomas Anderson film. And that was the first thing you wanted to fix about me. You were like, this is a problem. I don't know if we can really be friends if you haven't ever watched Paul Thomas Anderson. So you gave me Magnolia and There Will Be Blood and said, go now. So Paul Thomas Anderson and the Coen brothers are my two favorite directors. And that is only recently in life because of your recommendation. I agree with you on the way that the story is told with not a lot of words. I mean, you mention Aaron Sorkin and Noah Baumbach, and there's something to be said about the way that dialogue, the way that a story is told with dialogue, and that kind of storytelling can be powerful in its own way. But I think that what inspires you and I is that really deep, wordless look on someone's face, and the way that this long shot carries out, and the meaning of the framing, and how lonely it makes you feel. And that's definitely something that inspires us in a really big way.
It's funny because watching that with Sydney, she looked at me very early on in the relationship with Daniel Plainview and his son HW, and she turns to me and she says, "Is he nice to his son?" And she like could feel this weight that something was coming.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to answer that question. And then she just kept egging me on. It's oh gosh.
The TV show that I am just all about right now is Escape at Dannemora. And blows my mind that Ben Stiller is directing this thing. I mean, these awesome actors are starting to just kill it in the directing world. The other one I want to mention is one of my favorite films. You watched There Will Be Blood. You went back in time with your favorite films. I couldn't sleep the other night, and so I watched The Place Beyond the Pines, which I would say is the first film that really made me want to make films. I watched The Place Beyond the Pines, and it like, I was just getting into cameras. I was just starting to pay attention to like wanting to make videos. I wanted to make some tech videos. I wanted to make some videos for church. And then I watched The Place Beyond the Pines, and it like something clicked inside my brain, and I was like, I want to do that. Dark dramas that really wrestle with family of origin. That is something that I really want to do. So I went back and I watched that the other night. Noticed in the credits, additional photography, Reed Morano. How does Reed Morano keep showing up in my favorite things? So got on Twitter, tweeted Reed Morano, didn't know you did. Additional photography in the credits was listed right below still photography. So I made the assumption that it was she also did still photography on set. So I tweeted, didn't know Reed Morano did this on set. How do you keep showing up in these places? And she tweeted back at me, I actually did additional photography, which means she was DP when the director and when director and DP were not there. So she did pick up landscapes, sunsets. There were some moving shots that it's like second unit basically. Mm-hmm. And the things she listed, I immediately knew what they were. I remembered seeing those in the film and thinking, wow, those are really cool. Reed Morano ran camera for a lot of the shots in one of my favorite films. Mm-hmm. Blew my mind. She wrote me back on Twitter.
Yes. I
had to swallow it and say I didn't know what that meant in the credits and whatever. People are liking her tweet right now.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what I said.
Yeah. And you know, I it was cool that she wrote you back. I think
really cool.
Sydney asked, she goes, well, she being nice? I go, I think so. I think she's saying she wants to be appropriately credited for her work. Yeah. And she also wants to make sure that there was somebody who did stills, and she doesn't want anyone to believe that she was the one that took stills. She wants that person to be appropriately credited.
Totally.
And I thought it was cool. And gosh, her freaking work is phenomenal. Thank you for listening. The Cinetherapy podcast is produced by Inland Film Co. Special thanks to The Fly that wouldn't leave us alone during the recording of today's podcast. And that's a wrap.